Greetings, beautiful friend. My name is David McLeod, and I am your life mastery coach, author of the book A Life to Die For, and one of the co-authors of the best-selling series, The Wellness Universe Guide to Complete Self-Care. Welcome to Life Mastery Soul Memos, my monthly series aimed at helping you to expand and magnify your life one simple idea at a time. This is episode 21, Pain versus Suffering. I have a question for you. What is the most painful thing you have ever experienced? Take a moment to think about that. Are you able to identify one thing in your life that was more painful than anything else? Assuming the answer is yes, as that memory comes back, are you able to remember the pain itself? Pain is a very strange phenomenon. At the moment that it happens, it can really hurt. But after time has passed, the pain itself goes away. And in a pretty short time, you may find it difficult to remember exactly how that pain felt. That's certainly been true for me. I remember when I was in my early teens, I went to a Boy Scout meeting, and I was roughhousing with some of the other guys. I lost my balance, and I fell back and sideways in a strange manner. I remember the sense of panic as I clawed the air, trying to gain control of my fall. As most people would probably have done, I reacted instinctively to break my fall by putting my hands down in front of me. But when I landed, I had the most excruciating jolt of pain up my left arm. I suddenly went very faint and I nearly passed out. A few seconds later, my left wrist began throbbing with an intense pain like I had never experienced before. I got rushed to the hospital, and it was soon learned that I had a compression fracture in my wrist. There wasn't a doctor available to set my wrist that night, and the damage wasn't so bad that I needed emergency surgery. So the nurse on duty wrapped my wrist in a tensor bandage, gave me some aspirin or codeine or something like that, and sent me home. A very unpleasant sleepless night followed as I tossed and turned, trying vainly to find a comfortable position for my wrist. I went back to the hospital the next day, by which time my wrist had already begun to set. So the doctor had to re-break it in order to set it properly. Well, mercifully, this required me to be completely sedated and taken to an operating room. After the procedure was completed, I woke up in a recovery room with a cast that extended from my wrist all the way up to my armpit, with my arm bent at the elbow and the wrist angled just right so it would heal. Well, thankfully, although the cast was a little uncomfortable, the pain itself was gone. The interesting thing for me is that I can remember many of the details of that experience. I can see all the images of the event clearly in my mind, even though it happened over 50 years ago. But no matter how I try, I cannot remember what that pain felt like. I only remember that it hurt like hell at the time. I can't remember the sensation of the pain, but I can certainly remember all my thoughts that happened while the pain was present. And it is those thoughts that remind me that the pain hurt. Now, let me switch gears here for a second and ask you a different question. Can you remember a time in your life when you were really suffering? In particular, can you remember an experience where there was no real pain present, but you were suffering because of the circumstances themselves? Can you remember the details of that experience? How does this experience of suffering compare to your worst experience of pain? When I think of the difference between these two kinds of experiences, I notice that suffering is generally much more unpleasant and uncomfortable for me. Not only that, but all my memories of suffering seem to have been more long-term events, things that seem to drag on interminably. When I look within to see why I experience these things differently, what I notice is that pain is often something that just happens, while suffering is almost always a choice I make to dwell on something in my life. Usually my suffering takes the form of endless mental dialogue about my own shortcomings or some story about how I might have been victimized. What's more, my suffering intensifies as I focus more accusatory energy on the supposed perpetrator of my situation, whether it's a person or a set of circumstances. The main thing that I notice is that my suffering always stems from the chatter of my ego mind. That is an important realization for me. The ego mind is not necessarily the cause of pain, but it is almost always the cause of suffering. And it is always a choice whether to engage the ego mind or not. Years ago, I remember reading Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, which chronicled his experiences as an inmate at the Auschwitz concentration camp during World War II. What I really took away from that book was that even in the most horrific of circumstances, in which most people would claim to have gone through extreme suffering, we always have a choice about how we deal with our circumstances. If we wallow in despair, we will succumb to our suffering. But if we remain positive and hopeful and focus on what we can learn from the situation, then instead we can rise above our suffering and possibly even prosper from it. When pain happens, it may be unavoidable. You may have to tough it out. But don't let your ego mind transform a temporary painful situation into something that leads to extended suffering. This is totally counterproductive and could actually lead to other health-related issues that might be even worse than what you are dealing with now. My invitation to you is to remember always the truth of who you really are, namely, a divine, magnificent, unlimited spiritual being of light and love, having a temporary human experience on the physical plane. If you can stay connected to your innate divinity in all circumstances, then you'll never suffer another moment in your life. If you are looking for articles, videos, and other powerful content that can help you improve your life, please check out my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. Grab a copy of one of my free ebooks right on the front page and sign up for a free account so you can get access to everything else I offer there. Also, I want to remind you that I have some availability in my coaching practice for new clients. If you would like to find out how I might be of service to you, sign up for a free Life Mastery Discovery session. You can find the details on my website. That's yourlifemasterycoach.com. Well, thanks for joining me today. Remember, don't confuse pain and suffering. Pain is something you feel. Suffering is the endless story loop your ego mind wraps around it. Pain seems unavoidable. Suffering is entirely a choice. Choose always to remember the truth of who you are and stay connected always to your boundless divine nature. Until we meet again, I wish you love, light, and blessings on your journey. I'll see you next time right here on Life Mastery Soul Memos. Bye-bye.